So here's the configuration for the 3 series. We're saying line. This is where I think the colors, I guess, they were selected automatically. You can select the color that you want each one to display. So all of these configurations, it's pretty obvious when you look at it. So the more important thing is to look at the architecture of it. So let's talk about that. Here we go. One cool thing about the charts is that they're store driven, like most components in EXT. You have a grid. You interact with the store. You edit the records in the store. You don't have to go into the grid and change anything. The record is bound. The grid is bound to the store, and as you update the store, the view updates. It's the same thing with this chart. So you have the store with data, and as you update the store, as you add new records to it, or you edit records to it, edit records from it, then it's going to automatically update the chart. So that's the core of it. The second part is ext series.series, which defines the type of series, area, bar, pi, and the labels, whether to highlight the series, to give it tooltips. And then the next part, the other part of configuration is the axis. The axis format, position, grid, and title. It's a little hard to figure out when you're looking at this. Okay, well, now I want to know what are my available properties that I can set on each of the series. So let's look at the documentation. I'm going to show you. EXT. It's here. Chart. Okay. So here, for the series types, if we look at series, there's a base class series, and then there's all these other ones that you can create. Area, bar, Cartesian, column, and each one has different configuration properties. So when you're configuring a series, here we chose line. So you're supposed to use a configuration from line. So you have these options, you have these configs. Here, config, go over it, and it shows you all the things that you can control with it. So if I wanted to use a gauge chart, basically, I would change this to say type equals gauge. How do we know the name of it? The string. Just the string to pass. I don't think it's this, just lowercase. But maybe it is. That's not.
It's in the code as an alias, right?
Maybe it is. Let's check. Let's look at the source. Yeah. So alias, something called series.gauge. So EXT has all these things that you can create things through strings instead of their actual constructors. And you can create plugins like that. You can create widgets. You can create, I guess, series too. And the first part of that is basically the first part of this name here, series.gauge. Is like a namespace. So it knows. So it uses different mechanisms to create, a series, a plugin, and a component. But it can do all this string-based stuff, which I find it gives you lots of nice things, but you lose a lot too, because if you mistype, just mistyping these strings can be very, very error-prone and hard to find.
So for relatively small data sets, this looks really workable. What about extremely large data sets? Does it have, is the viewport for the chart, is it a scrollable viewport as well? Or is it just a fixed viewport?
No, it's a fixed viewport.
Okay, so there's no caching or there's no lazy display or anything if
No,
I've
there
got
isn't
really
any
large
of that.
data sets? I guess wait until the full data set's loaded into the store?
Well, so usually the suggestion for that is that you should never have the store shouldn't be your full, it's a cache of the records that you're displaying. It's not your whole data. You should not get the whole data because the main thing is you only have 1,000 pixels. If you're going to try to plot 10,000 points, that doesn't make any sense. So usually what you want to do is you can create your own abstraction that would control a store to do these kinds of things, but it doesn't have anything built in,
Right.
like an infinite scrolling thing or that
The
kind
store
of.
purely manages what's displayed.
Right.
Only.
It's completely tied to that view. That store, the view is bound to that store, and it's going to display whatever's in that store. So you definitely do not want to go into a place where you have more points than you have pixels. Applications get really, really slow, especially in IE with VML.
Or if you're taking extremely large data sets, and so in the background of my app, if I'm parsing that down to a smaller subset for display purposes, I also would like it to start to display as I'm populating the store. I can actually display it as I'm populating the store. Correct?
You could do that, exactly, yeah.
Does the grid work the same way? So as far as large grid, is there a scrollable grid?
Well, now with the XT4, you can create, what they've been able to do is they created the infinite scrolling. It can do it different ways. It can have that, the kind that as you scroll, it fetches for just that piece of data. And there's another kind which is completely client-side. You give it all the data, but you don't want to have to render 50,000 nodes.
Right.
And it only renders what's currently visible.
So that's
So-
within the porting?
Yeah, that's in ext4.
And it does the memory management for when something scrolls off the screen as well, that it dumps it and frees up the space?
My guess is yes, because they're touting this as the, people have had a lot of complaints trying to stick a lot of data in the grids. And,
Everybody has a problem with it.
yeah,
It's nothing unique.
I mean, that's the thing that people use the most out of EXT. So we talked about where the configuration is for the series, and then we also need to, for the axes. So basically, there's a category. Let me see how that, it's probably the same way too. Is there an alias? Yep, axes.category, and that's what you use to, I wish the documentation would just say what its like type is. So basically, there's one for a gauge that, that displays stuff like that, and you can give it different steps so that something that grows exponentially. And the trickier, this is stuff you have to read and get into, but the trickier part is realizing that you need to you have to choose a type of axis, choose a type of series, and then hook that up with the store. A lot of time trying to get started with it, it's hard to, okay, well, I want something else, where do I go and do it? So this is the basics of.
The animation that you had when it first came up, was that just as the store was being populated, or did you make some special calls to generate it?
No, that automatically, there's an animate config for the chart itself. So let's look at the chart. Where's the chart? Did you click? There you go, just. Whoa.
It's just one of the parameters that you passed.
Yeah, so animate, I just like to show this from here. Animate, and it's basically just going to animate it every time you can give it parameters for how to animate. So, but Firefox wasn't doing a very good job. So let me just see. I want to show you the animation with Chrome. Is this here? Didn't I install it?